or waiting
No
for the
problem.
coffee to brew, grabbing popcorn for today's session, all the above. It's gonna be
Well,
fun.
now that you
streaming
mention
live.
it, I wish I had some popcorn.
I guess you only speak on the first part, so you would have time to grab some popcorn for Philip.
Yeah, my part's just a few minutes. Philip's is the more exciting, the live session. So I should have had a snack, kick back, maybe have a hard seltzer or something. It's hot outside today. I'm on the
Yeah,
East
same.
Coast in New York. Is it?
Same in Zurich. It's like 32. Oh, I don't know Fahrenheit.
I actually did a conversion yesterday, and I saw that 70 Fahrenheit was about 21 Celsius, so 32 is more than that. Yeah, that sounds warm.
I guess Philip knows Celsius as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, next weekend is getting really hot here.
Is it?
Over 30, 35 degree.
Next weekend we're in Barcelona, yeah? That's the weekend you're talking about, or this coming one?
No, the coming one. Sorry.
Okay.
Welcome all the guests, or the audience. We are gonna start in just a few minutes. Don't make the mistake of Dan and grab some popcorn before we actually start.
Good thing you said something. I said good thing you reminded me. I was about to go downstairs and get a snack.
Awesome. Welcome.
Will we see any chats, any questions coming through Zoom? Or are they all going to come through Twitter?
Yes, so now most of the questions come from Zoom. So if you see one yourself, you can stop and answer it, or I will be reading out. I will be reading them out for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to monitor the chat, Philip, if you don't want to. But and I'll stop you at every few minutes with the questions if we have.
Did Andrew just pause, or is that me? Philip, you're still live, yeah? You hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Andrew paused there 1 second. Let me check in with him. Maybe he's freeze there.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thank you to everyone who's joining us now, and please be patient with us. Having a couple of technical difficulties.
My internet went out at the exact moment I would have started, so now that I'm back, I'm using the phone.
We covered for you. I think you can start now.
Awesome. Okay. Using the phone's 4G. Let's see how that goes. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Supernova workshop. My name is Andrew, and I work at Dfinity as a developer relations engineer. As per usual, today's session is being recorded, and it will be available later on Dfinity's YouTube channel. Today, our guests are Dan Ostrovsky, the founder, and Philipp Litzenberger, the interim CTO of Identity Labs. Identity Labs has a mission to eliminate friction from the internet with the development of NFID built on top of our beloved internet identity, all without sacrificing any privacy or security. To hear more about identity on the internet computer, Dan, Philip, thank you for joining us, and the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for this opportunity. I prepared a few slides. Let me just share that now. Oops, those are the actual slides. Let me share my screen. Okay. So I'll kick us off here. There are just a few slides. I really only wanted to share with you today how NFID will be able to enable you to build applications that don't yet exist. So I'll start by introducing who we are, the team, what you should expect from us, and then Philip will take over the bulk of this session to review live how to add NFID to your applications. we've grown steadily over these last handful of months. We're now a team of 11. We span across designers, QA, React, and Rust developers. And we're backed by some of the people you've already heard and read about. Alexa from Polychain and Claude from Tomahawk both gave workshop presentations recently. Ruby Light Ventures is the team behind UserGeek and Canister Geek. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. If you have not, you really should. It's a very helpful tool. Joachim Breitner was a staff engineer at Dfinity for a long time and wrote a lot of the code base for, well, a lot of the Internet Computer, but specifically for us, Internet Identity. And Matt Simons is just generally involved in a huge variety of teams building on the Internet Computer today. And we're also supported by many of the teams you know and love. And we're currently finishing up a few requirements to enable integrations with them. And the reason we're engaged with them is the reason we're giving this workshop. When they issue tokens or airdrops, how do they know they're issuing to a human and not a bot? How would Discover know, let's say, to grant you access to a portal that requires you to have achieved a particular reputation in district? How does Tonic know you're not on the international sanctions list when you trade NFTs on Entrepot? And how do they do that while preserving the user's privacy, which is of absolute importance to the mass adoption of identity? And they'll know because they'll use NFID, the privacy preserving identity layer of the internet. And it's all of you that unlock this new wave of innovation by leveraging privacy preserving, trusted identity attributes. So what does this mean for you? What kind of innovation would we be enabling? When it comes to DAOs and governance, one of the biggest problems today is this sense that the richest have the most weight. And it's unclear when multiple DAO members are actually owned by the same human. But to even experiment with new voting models like quadratic voting, the application needs to identify unique accounts. NFT and token airdrops suffer the same problem. How do you incentivize people to participate in value creation while limiting allocation to unique accounts, so we don't end up with people spamming your application with fake accounts just to collect on the airdrops? And as an application developer, sometimes you'll want to know that someone has achieved a certain status on other applications, like a People Party credential from the NNS or a credential from Mod Club. But how do you do that without jeopardizing that person's privacy? NFID is there for you in these cases and more. From the beginning, we wanted to make sure user anonymity is the default and friction to your application is removed. That's why users don't need to download anything. Users can authenticate with your application from any of their devices, and they'll never need to memorize another phishable password again. And really, that's the end for my part. Reach out to me on Twitter or us at Identity Maxis for any questions. We're happy to connect and help you guys with any of your use cases. And with that, I'll kick it over to Philipp for a live session. Philipp?
All right, thank you. So let's start with what NFID actually looks like. So we have already quite some implementations. I think that the app most people know about is this cool shiny new search engine Kinnick. And here I would like to show you how the actual user experience looks like when you integrate NFID. As you can see here, we have both versions, or they have both identity provider implemented, internet identity, but also NFID. And here you will notice already the first difference. We have an option integrated for you to open NFID within a new window. That is not exclusive to NFID. We have updated the auth client from Internet Identity or from Dfinity to allow this as a specific configuration for the window which gets opened. So
and actually,
yeah,
sorry, Philipp, we should clarify that we submitted the PR to Dfinity Agent and it's available as of 0.11.0. And actually, UserGeek did implement this for Internet Identity. So if you're using Internet Identity and you don't want to switch over to NFID for whatever reason, Yeah, there
Very
we
cool.
go.
Yeah, here you see that.
Wow.
Very cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that was
really
like the intention.
Simple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, very cool. So that also gives directly a good hint on like NFID is actually fulfilling the exact same interface like internet identity. It's really just behaving exactly the same, just has a different user experience. And yeah, good point. So starting with 011, right, is the version with which you can use it.
Yep.
And would this pop-up window be blocked by some browsers?
So the nice thing is that it's just a native browser feature. So for example, when I go here in full screen mode, or like, do you still see my screen?
Yes.
Probably. Yep. So, okay, cool. Because it's native browser feature, when I now just click NFID, it will just open in a new tab. So, and the same is just for mobile, for example, on mobile devices where you don't actually have this concept of a floating window, it will just natively behave correct. Does this answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
Perfect.
All right. So in this case, what you see here is like I already have an account, and because of that, I can just directly unlock my NFID account here with my biometric device from my MacBook. And what you can see here is a different concept we have created, which is like we have accounts for different applications. So here you see my Kinnick account number 1. And when I click that, it produces the same delegate or similar delegate, which would be created by internet identity. So here you see now the starting numbers of my identity principal ID. When I log out, I can just showcase the same thing with internet identity maybe. So this is what they don't have this principal ID anymore. But here you see just this HNVMW, that is like my delegate from internet identity. And when I log out and use again my NFID delegate, you will see just it's a different one, but it behaves exactly the same. So,
and I think maybe we can clarify here that the corollary between inner identity and NFID is that with inner identity, if you want to create multiple accounts to the application, you have to have multiple anchors. With NFID, Philipp is showing that this is not the case. You can have one NFID and then create any number of accounts. However, the application can restrict the number of accounts that are created with it. So at the moment, I believe, Philipp, keep me honest, that we have a limit of 5. And this is in the case that the application, well, we want to have a limit, but exactly. Applications can decide how many accounts they want. So there are some applications that were shared in the presentation who only want one account, and the screen will just be the unlock NFID. And as soon as or rather continue with NFID, and as soon as you press that button, you continue with one principal. But if an application allows multiple, then you could have multiple.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point. Thanks. That is like you would expect from other identity providers as well. It requires us to do some configuration, of course. So you need to reach out to us and define that you don't want to have more accounts, or you just want to have one account. So, but that is like, yeah, we can introduce this flexibly. So what I also wanted to show you here is like, now we have 2 accounts, and that is like exactly the thing here. So every application on the internet has will have their specific set of accounts, of course. So here with Canister Geek, I haven't created one. So when I would like to log in, I would need to create my first account here as well. So now you might be wondering how that might look for a new user. and therefore I'm just going into
Philip, while you're bringing that up, we do have a question just on the multiple accounts and whether they belong, if the application can know whether the accounts belong to the same person. There is no way to do that because we're very adamant about preserving the user's privacy. So it is a totally new principle that is unlinkable to any other principle to maintain that user anonymity. However, the application can enforce that there's only one account per identity for their application by requesting certain pieces of information from the user. So for example, Mod Club has a proof of humanity credential. If you as an application want to receive that credential and you trust that credential and you believe that this is an acceptable form of proof of humanity, you may request that and it will be unique in your application. So if you request it from another user who is masquerading with another principal, then you'll receive the same credential with the same hash, and you'll know that, oops, this person already has an account with you. So you can determine what you want to do with that information. And a Mod Club credential is just one credential. There is a verified phone number. So if you verify your phone number through NFID, now that is a credential that you as an application developer can request from users. And you can imagine just any credential issued across any application, anything about that identity, you'll be able to request from that user and know with certainty that it is either unique to your application or it's already been used.
Yeah, exactly. A really good point. Like exactly also like verifying that you are the owner of a NFT, right? I just had, so NFID is really getting into a system which holds credentials or verifiable credentials for the user. And we build the thing in a flexible way so that we can extend it into any direction in the future. The most requested features, I think, are maybe good to mention then. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can mention them briefly. Sure. A little teaser.
Like verified phone numbers, of course, like to get really get information about if a user has a carrier phone number, which is attached to his identity. And NFID will, of course, make sure that this is only used with or is only usable within one anchor. So, of course, or one NFID number, which is the same concept as the internet identity anchors. So you cannot register the same carrier phone number for different anchors, of course, but then safely present it to other users.
And privately, safely and privately.
Yeah, exactly. So this privately means that we cannot, or no other application is able to trace back which anchor or which principal ID belongs to which anchor. That's the same like for internet identity, but yeah, we still, or we have this with a more flexible approach of creating as many accounts as we want, while preserving the ability to make sure that this is still one human with just different accounts, right?
And without revealing the actual information behind the credential. So this is a zero knowledge proof that it is a unique phone number. You're not actually, as an application developer, you're not actually getting that phone number unless you request that it is that the user does provide the actual phone number to you as the application. And this is the consent that users will be displayed with, and users can decide for themselves if they want to reveal this information or not.
But if I'm building Facebook on the IC, how will I track my users through their IDs?
How do you mean track users?
That was just joking.
Oh, I see.
I'm thinking a lot about that fact, of course, but so yeah, you will have a hard time doing so, but of course there are still ways of doing it, I think. Anyway,
yeah, especially if the application does want to track you, then they can just say, hey, in order to continue into our application, we need every piece of information from you. But at least the user is provided with that consent. And that is not something that we have in Web 2. It's just by default, okay, everyone can see everything associated to my email address. Everyone can see everything associated to my phone number. And we don't have that sort of user consent system built in as a layer of identity wrapped around the internet. And that's the piece that we're working on. And the privacy preservation is critical. And this zero knowledge proof across these principal identifiers is absolutely critical, because the issue with having one key is that now you are more and more identifiable. That's why Chainalysis is the most profitable and largest, most successful company in terms of revenue in Web3 right now, is because they can identify keys. You can't have one key. You need a million keys. That's the core of NFID.
I just had thought about it before this workshop. Like, when you think about identity currently on Web 2 is very fragmented, right? So, for example, all these techniques we currently need for certain things like verified phone number, or even identity itself, like an authentication provider, but also something like know your customer. All these things are fragmented, like in different services. So, and as a developer, when you want to build a application which depends on those services, you have to integrate all them by yourself. And that is, of course, possible, but it's not the biggest fun to do, right? And what I just thought about this before this workshop was like, we are really thinking identity first and trying to get all these things which are painful for developers but crucial in terms of identity, and provide them as a service, so that, for example, you can just request a verified phone number, so you don't need to worry about how you can implement AWS with phone number sending services. Neither do you need to integrate just another know your customer service in all different countries. So you can in the future just request KYC credential from NFID, and you will be safely presented with it and can trust that everything works out nicely. And the good part is, of course, like for the user itself, that isn't fun either, right? To run through KYC for every other app is kind of painful. And with us, because we are storing that information safely on your account or on your NFID, you can present it as often as you want. So you just verify your phone number once, and you can share it with any app which requests that credential, and the same for KYC or for Mod Club credentials. So I think that is like really the cool part about that.
And someone asked if it's encrypted. The answer is yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
And encrypted, both including the phone number. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like, of course, like we need to, in this decentralized system, we need to encrypt everything end to end, of course. And that is also like one interesting key fact about NFID, what we have talked a lot about then, right? Like NFID essentially is a key management solution when you think about it. So all your biometric devices, or all the authentication factors you currently have, like Face ID, Touch ID on your MacBook, or fingerprint sensors on Android or Windows Hello, all these biometric devices producing key pairs. So, and you need to have someone who takes care of distributing or connecting them and make sure that you can deterministically create a unique key for a unique identifier for the applications. And that is exactly what Internet identity and NFID are doing. And of course, like all the big players are working on that to make that even more convenient, but always limited within their ecosystem. So for example, Apple, of course, how's it called then?
Passkeys.
Passkeys, exactly. So this will be an option which you can use as a developer, or which might be even automatically available, is like that as soon as you have created a key pair for Face ID, it will be automatically synced across all devices. And the cool part about that is like, it's for us, it just is a additional benefit, because we then don't need to worry about syncing those keys anymore, so which we currently do. And as soon as these technologies are available, the user experience with NFID will get even easier. So, but I think the really good part about this is that our service will bridge this to all different platforms. So like you will have the syncing feature across Windows, Mac, Android, whatever devices you have. All of them will be attached to your identity and will be able to create these unique identifiers for you to use within the context of apps.
So basically, Apple's new development on this front actually helps NFID instead of trying to create a replacement for it.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's like, so maybe, Philip, this is a good opportunity to switch over to show how we can add a device from an unregistered browser. And that's kind of the challenge right now with inner identity. We made it easier with NFID to add another device. So you see here, this particular browser is unregistered, and somehow it needs to be registered with your NFID. And similarly with inner identity, somehow you need to register that device with your anchor. And our solution is, well, let's just have you scan it from a phone. And if the phone's not registered, you have an opportunity to create an anchor at that point. But if it is registered, then Philip will show you that it really just shows the same screen as before. And now you just kind of continue on as usual. But the difference with Apple, Microsoft, and Google, their recent announcement, is that actually, when you create the key pair once, they're now available across all of your devices that are registered to that Apple ID or that Microsoft ID or that Google ID. So making it a lot easier. You don't have to do this scanning through us. You'll just do it natively through the Apple, Microsoft, and Google ecosystems. Yeah, Philip. Sorry.
No, exactly. So here now you have just seen, I've scanned the QR code on my phone. I was registered already. So you have seen the same two accounts I have created earlier. And now I just authenticated on my phone. And we have built a kind of pub/sub channel service on the IC, which is able for us to send those credentials back and forth between the unregistered device and our mobile device. And we now present the user here with two options. Like the easy one is we have this concept of like, or thinking of devices which are public, so you probably don't own. So like, for example, when you're a student and you're sitting in the university and you have just some shared computer or whatever, then you currently don't have the ability with internet identity to sign into that computer, right? Because how would you do that? I mean, the only option would be probably to use your security device, but with our solution, it's just easier. So you can just say, don't trust this device, it's public, and just authenticate. So this will just use the same technique like before. We have produced this delegate on our phone and send it over. Now, when you log out, you are still on an unregistered device. So when we do the same thing again, where's my video for that? Here. So we scan again and say unlock. And of course, we can just use any account here, of course, or create a new one. That would also work. Then, and here you see the loading time is quite noticeable at the moment, but that is really some concern of us at the moment. So we are working a lot on performance optimization. Some of those things are just low-hanging fruits where we can just improve the way how we call the different stages or steps in the process. Others are just like in the nature of the internet computer. But we already have a good amount of improvements in the pipeline to come out in the next weeks. So the other thing is when you say trust this device, that is what we have talked about a lot. Like, so now this device needs to be registered. So next time I want to log in, I want to use the same biometric device on my machine for this account. So I'm just registering it again. And so now I just realized maybe it could fail because it's already registered on that account. Let's see if it's working. Oh yeah, it's okay. We even have made this resilient already. So now we have just registered that device itself and should see now that we are registered. So, and you see that just within the incognito window. So the next time I'm opening it, it will be gone. But now I can just use the same account here again with the registered device. Any questions to that so far?
Not to this, but we have general questions from Twitter, if this is a good point to ask some. Okay, so, yep.
Yeah, why don't I just really quickly answer the Q&A in Zoom, because it's been staring me in the face for the last 10 minutes.
All right, sounds good.
Is there a seed recovery option? Yes, but we don't really like seed phrases because they are a phishable credential. So we will be replacing that with something more resilient. And it would be like a multi-factor recovery across any number of authenticators. And I'm using the terms generally because an authenticator can mean Google, it can mean Facebook, it can mean Twitter, it can mean Discord, it can mean any of those things. So you could do M of N of those to recover your account without a recovery phrase, but it could also be people and other anchors. So you could, will very easily be able to administer a kind of social key recovery by basically splitting a recovery key across any number of other NFID anchors. So that's that one. And then, is it possible to make some transactions possible only by using the seed phrase, for example, to withdraw all your funds? Yes, that's also possible. And we have just finished up a new submission with Jordan Last of Demergent Labs to Internet Identity to protect the recovery phrase further. And without going into detail about what that submission is actually doing, we laid out the framework and architecture and infrastructure to be able to assign a kind of permission and security threshold for each device. So if you want your recovery phrase to be the super admin, and that's the only thing that will authenticate you to do certain actions, we will expose that as well in the NFID interface.
And some questions from Twitter. How do you see this solution reducing friction for non-crypto people coming to the IC for the first time?
Very good question. Yeah. I think we can do some teasing here, Dan.
Oh, you think so? Okay. So just before this chat, we were sharing with Andrew and Julia that we have been in communication with some teams. Maybe that's not something that we can share, but some pretty big applications on the internet computer who will only integrate us when we have easier registration and authentication options, like, for example, sign in with Google. So that is a feature we'll be exposing in the next, I don't want to say, maybe, Philip, like couple of weeks. I want to say less than that, which is
Let's
possible.
say it's very close.
Very close. Let's say very close. So you'll be able to create an NFID anchor with Google and then authenticate yourself to that anchor with Google. So it's just, the normal Web 2 experience.
But why would you use Google if you want to move away from the Web 2 authentication?
So it's basically just a factor for you, which gives you access to a cryptographic key, basically. This key can be sharded, so we will be able to still store that in a secure way so that no one really can easily access it. But what you can do with it is like just make it easier to use your identity from devices which don't have biometrics. And like really, I think of this like building a bridge into the Web 2 world, because I think that's ultimately what happens, right? I don't have a single friend in my network, which is like a non-technical friend, or even the technical friends weren't really able to register to internet identity without my help. And I think that is really a bad issue. So that's what I call this kind of, or for me, that feels like a bridge into Web 2, what we need to have. Like we need to be able to pick the people up where they are. And that is with sign in with Google or sign in with Twitter, whatever they use, LinkedIn, whatever.
But we will, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We will encourage people to go the Web3 route. We will encourage people to create the passkey instead, or add a key to your YubiKey. Have a secured key instead of these Web 2 options. But like Philipp said, we need to meet people where they are. And the most highly requested feature is sign in with Web 2. And one of our guys was saying, because of course we were concerned about this, we didn't want to backtrack and allow this to happen. But one of our guys, I think, very eloquently said, if people want Web 2, let's give them Web 2. And I think that also is a segue to answering this question, how much of NFID is off chain, including the infrastructure? Well, the Web 2 components are on Web 2, but everything else is on the internet computer. So the Web 2 components are part of sign in with Google. It is when your phone number is verified, there is a part of that process that needs to be on Web 2 because we can't have outgoing HTTP calls yet. And the service to actually send an SMS is like, maybe that's an open call to anybody on the internet computer that wants to create a service like this. But at the moment, it doesn't exist. So we need a different way of doing that. Those components are on Web 2, but everything else is still on the internet computer.
Also, I just highlighted the domain. So, but that is also just for convenience at the moment. So it is just a proxy to our canister. So the front end is basically deployed on internet computer, but we have struggled so much with that problematic long numberish domain that we thought for an identity provider, it's not the best idea to be very hard to understand if you're on the right page, right? So
yeah, maybe Philipp, you could just open that unlock screen to show the challenge and where it would appear.
What do you mean?
Yeah, just reopen, just close this and reopen NFID auth. And then click on unlock to display the challenge. So at this point, you see Google Chrome's trying to verify your identity on NFID.1. Well, without this, it would be trying to verify your identity on canister 1234567 xyz457.ic0.app, and this frightened users. So we needed a shorter way of doing that, number one. And number two, we're built on internet identity. And what that means is you can actually switch your front end provider very easily. If you have an internet identity anchor, you can actually switch to using that anchor on NFID and NFID.1. If our domain switches, you can easily migrate to a new domain. So it's not stuck to that domain forever, your anchor, that is. So this is a Web 2 component for sure, but it is a migratable component.
I just wanted to show the recover NFID. I think that is what you were referring to, right?
Like yeah, but we can have documentation on it later.
Exactly. So in case we need to change the URL, and it probably will be possible in the future very soon to have these IC domains, which is promised to be in the next releases, right? Kind of near future. So that will definitely get rid of this. And I also just wanted to add, like, of course, there might be still services which are just not ready for Web3, like what you mentioned with sending phone number. But we are always looking into that, and it really looks like the most parts of the service are easy runnable on the IC and do run there. Like you said, just the Web 2 elements just cannot be there, of course.
Yeah, and actually, this verified phone number is really just a credential, and NFID is able to, with user consent, provide these kinds of credentials across applications. So if you have an application like Mod Club, like the NNS People Party, when that comes out, whatever application you have, if you have sign in with NFID, that user automatically is able to use the information that they have saved with you and your application, and then prove it with zero knowledge across all other applications. So if Kinnick all of a sudden decides, oh, actually, we really only want to gate or discover, we only want to gate some portals with the verified phone number credential from Internet Identity Labs, then they can choose to do that. If they want to gate another portal and exclusively gate it to only people who have a Mod Club credential, they can provide that. If you have a credential that you want to create a portal in that is exclusively only for your credential, then that can happen as well. So it is, this is a Web 2 credential, but it's not exclusive. If you have any sort of information that you save for that principal ID in your canisters, then it becomes a reusable credential across applications.
Are you guys also planning to add credit cards? Or
yes, fiat onboarding, offboarding. It's a longer term project, but yes, absolutely. We'll have wallet support this summer, privacy preserving, so you don't share.
That's also something I'm really keen about, or not keen, but I think it's really important to show this difference, right? When we think about identity, we of course think about wallets. But currently we have the impression that in Web3, everyone thinks about identity being an address on a blockchain, which is completely not what we envision to be identity. So of course, you will be able to have multiple wallets and addresses to transfer whatever currency between other accounts. But that is just another entity within your identity. And it's not like the root thing of your identity. So like, then you mentioned that quite some times before, like you would never in the real world go somewhere and show your credit card to get access to it, right? Or
that you won't. Why would you ever sign in with your bank account?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's crazy to me. But it's not just your bank account. Like imagine now if everything that we're doing, all of our activity is associated to one identifier. First of all, we already mentioned Chainalysis being the most profitable company in Web3 because of this. But second, you as you have more information associated to one key, you yourself as a user will be less willing to expose yourself more and more. It's like you'll be afraid to add more and more information to this one identifier because it's so vulnerable. It contains everything of yours, and that's a very dangerous situation to be in. So yes, you need to have hundreds, thousands of keys. It needs to be scoped to the application specifically. And you need to be able to prove things across applications without revealing yourself. And we have 15.
Yeah.
How long do we have? Because we haven't even gotten into any sort of integration, which is kind of what we wanted to do in this time.
Then let's jump in. We can go like 5 to 10 minutes overtime if you can make it.
Okay.
Right. Cool. So I think in terms of integration, you will have the source of truth how to integrate with NFID is on when you check out, or let me show the documentation first. So everything we are doing is documented on docs.nfid1. That is like the entry point to our system. So we describe what NFID is, the key concepts, and then of course the basic installation. And we have mentioned that before in the beginning already. So when you think about integrating NFID, it is as simple as it is, or as hard as it is with internet identity at the moment. So when you have internet identity running already, then it's just a matter of replacing the URL basically. And we have this implemented, or you can see this on the docs, and you can also just see it here when we copy that domain or that URL and open a new tab. Like that is just okay. It's like a really long URL. The basic parts you can see.
We should actually just mention quickly, because it's so cool that Kinnick created an NFT. That logo is an NFT that they minted in their. I think it's like an ICME minting tool that they used to mint the NFT. Yeah, so that's like probably why it's so long.
Logo. Yeah. That's why the QR code is basically so big. Like let's check again. So I think that is something maybe worth mentioning. Here, this logo is currently applied or provided here by a query parameter, which is appended to the URL. So like we have our auth path is currently authenticate, and then you can give us an application name and an application logo. And that's basically it. So, and of course, like when you go crazy about that image and provide us a very long URL, then the QR code gets long, because we currently, to have the seamless experience, we also copy over the logo URL on the mobile phone, which would otherwise don't know anything about the application. So which kind of could make that QR code big. So just keep that in mind. Shorter image or shorter image name is better for that QR code. Anyway, so that is basic installation. So technically, really, it's nothing more than just replacing the identity provider from the auth client login with our URL or ID provider URL. That's all you need to do when you have internet identity running already. So we fulfill exactly the same interface. All the integration works exactly the same. So I'm not sure if, when you are familiar with how internet identity works, it's just sending messages between the application window and the identity window. And we do just exactly the same thing. So as we also mentioned already with this opener feature, so that was the pull request we provided to make that more seamless. Like, so I personally found that always very complicated or disruptive, that the whole thing just transitioned into a new tab, and then you're presented with a whole new system which you're not aware of. So that is what we brought up for this, like, so that you still can stay in the context of the application, and you just define where the auth window should open. And that is basically just a string. This is also just really basic browser configuration stuff, which you can pass in, and then the auth window will open in a pop-up instead. And you can define, of course, like the left, right position and the size. Yeah, that's mainly it, I would say. So for a basic introduction of how to build it into your application, we have provided two multiple examples. There was one popular example built by Kyle, which is really just a naked demo with the Ord client. And we just tweak that a bit here in terms of, Dan, guide me, where do I need to go? To tweak in terms of just adding our domain. I think it's here in this case. I'm
source.
on the wrong.
No, right branch, go to source.
Source.
Auth client demo assets.
Ah, yeah, exactly. Source. Index. Cool. So here you see exactly what we just showed from the documentation. So we have our application name, the application logo. This builds the Ord path. And then here from the Ord client login, we just pass the identity provider, which is exactly our NFID. So here, this is just for local development, if you're locally or not. This is then NFID plus Ord path. That's basically it. And here you place the window opener feature. So beside of that, we there is one thing you need to keep in mind. I'm not sure if you have experienced that, but when you develop with internet identity, you need to, and you want to have, or you have your own backend canister and you want to develop locally and work with internet identity or also with NFID, then technically you need to run the whole stack locally. So that when you are authenticated and you want to use that identity for your local actors, you need to have a delegate produced on your local replica. And therefore, we have created our SDK, which contains everything you need to run NFID on your local stack. And this is also the place where we want to accumulate everything related to NFID in the future. Currently, it's not like so nice as we want it to be. In general, we want to have an examples repository where you will find all different kind of examples like Vanilla.js, TypeScript, Next, Angular, whatever can be integrated with, or how you can integrate it. This will show up in the examples repository. Currently, our own example, which we are actually using for development, is just like the created with create IC app. And when you have time, we can just quickly go into that and just bootstrap it quickly. The other thing is, like in packages, you will find integration tooling for different frameworks. Currently, we only have React as a plugin, but it is not required. So this is just like a convenience layer, which is used in our example, for example, here, where we have our NFID and our Ord integration. Here you can see what it does. Like we just have from React ICII Ord, we have an identity provider where you can just conveniently configure everything, including like the URL and the window opener feature, which then just abstracts like all the Ord client stuff away from you. But that's just React specific. Nothing really required about this. The important bits here is like all the helper functions to run the NFID stack locally. There is, I think that is worth mentioning. This is a cool feature they have or Dfinity has provided, where in your DFX JSON, where you can reference pre-built WASM files. And that is exactly what we are using here. So here you find your canister definitions for your local for your own local code, but then you can just, or here in this case, we just reference internet identity and their pre-built WASM file and just reference candid. Our own tooling like identity manager, pub sub channel, and the demo front end. And then by this, when you have defined this, oh, wait, wrong folder, sorry. When you have defined this, what you can do here is when you cloned our SDK, you can basically just run yarn, which sets up all the local tooling. What you need to do, of course, is setting up DFX, but you will have done this already anyway. And then when you run your local replica in this repository, then you can just run yarn NFID setup, which will then just install the whole stack locally and also configure everything correctly so that all the canisters know to whom they need to call or talk. I mean, that is like the biggest pain point in local development from my perspective when it comes to identity, or that was what I have struggled the most with, like, because of that fact. So it's really only working end to end when, or especially with identity, when everything is on the same replica. So when this is done, you can just start the front end, which will give you the whole experience locally running on 9090. And then one final point which needs to be done is, in order to be able to scan the QR code for local development while your application is running on localhost, we need to set up this this reverse proxy, which basically creates a reverse proxy to localhost, to a domain, which you can request from your mobile phone then while and talk to internet to talk to your internet not internet identity, so it's able to talk to the local replica. So you pull that thing up also automatically by yarn NFID tunnel. And then the last really important bit here is, from this output, what you need to do is you copy that that domain and use that in your own application as an authentication provider. So this replaces NFID.1 as a base domain. Everything after that stays then the same. So, and I think, well, that was quite hard. I could quickly show you that in how that looks like when we pull it up here from VS Code, for example. So you will also find convenience scripts here, like we have created VS Code tasks for those things in the demo, in the SDK package. So here you can just run this NFID front-end tunnel, which will then give you just this output, which you just saw. And oops, no, it's not working. Classic. Yeah, NFID tunnel, which gives you here this this domain. Hopefully I have not killed it now. It's the front end. Here's the demo, which I then can just run in the, I think I've closed it probably. Yeah, so, and then you can just, oops, yeah, now I killed it completely, I guess. So, or I need to replace this demo. Is that working here? Let me not use that public one. Yeah, so this will then just proxy to our front end, and you will just use that as a domain in your local installation. So what do you guys think? What makes the most sense? Shall we create a sample repository, or are any questions available so far?
We have about 7 minutes. I'm not sure if you can create the sample repository in that time frame.
No, I don't think so.
It's okay. I think we reviewed a lot of the documentation. That's the most important bit. And for a lot of people listening in, probably they already have inner identity. So the first step is just switch the URL? Why? Someone's asking, why do we need to proxy to something that isn't local for our local development? So Philipp, you'd
Good
already
question.
gone over that.
Yeah, but good question. Let me just reiterate on that. So there's no need for running this stuff locally. The problem only appears at the moment where you want to use the produce delegate within your local actors. So assume you have your application running locally, and now,
well, it's for the QR code, yeah.
It is for the QR code. That is the main reason, that is like the only reason to have ngrok. It's really just so that you can scan your local NFID instance on your phone. But it's kind of an edge case. It's really just required for that fact. To have all the stack locally is really only required when you have your own backend canister, which you want to test with a produce delegate, because that is just not working currently. When you produce a delegate with internet identity, also when you create that on identity.ico.app and try to use that identity on your local actor, you will receive a certificate mismatch error. And we try to convince Dfinity to fix that, but they haven't seen that as an issue because of the ability to just declare all your canisters locally. But still, I think it's kind of bad because it just makes things complicated in local development for that reason. So, and that is the only reason why you need to run locally. When you can also just assume it will work. When you're able to get the delegate, you can assume it will work. And it's just really for end-to-end testing. So that's the reason actually why we do all these tricks with the SDK and providing this local instance for just being able to run it end to end with authenticated actors locally. But strictly, you don't really require it. When you anyway deploy your app constantly to your staging canister, you can just as easy just live without all this stuff. So
yeah, so it's probably like 3 tiers. The easiest tier 1 is assume that things will work in production. Assume that NFID will generate you a delegate and a principal that you can call in production. So just use NFID.1 then as an identity provider. Tier 2 is you want to make authenticated calls locally on your canister while developing, and that's what Philipp explained. You can't get a delegate from NFID.1 or from identity.ic0.app. Delegate needs to be created locally, or else you get a certificate mismatch. And then tier 3 is if you want to test the entire NFID process, where you see here that there's a QR code, and then you want to be able to register locally by scanning the QR code on your phone, then there needs to be a proxy to establish a connection between these two local host browsers. And that's what the tunnel is for. Exactly. That's the only reason that we need ngrok for that. Yeah.
I think to summarize, I think the most important piece is you will find everything under docs.nfid.1 and you find the link there to our examples and stuff. Also very important to mention, I think, is our Discord channel. I think when you start integrating it and you will face issues, please just reach out to us there. We are very active and will be responsive there because like I feel your pain. So for me, it was also really hard to get into this identity business with internet identity and stuff. So if you have any issues, just ping us there and we will definitely help and try to improve our documentation around this integration stuff. So we are really committed to identity and want to make that as easy as possible, and hopefully we can improve that process a lot in the coming weeks.
Awesome. And now, because we have to cut it a little short, I'm wondering if maybe I can't promise anything, but if in a few weeks or a few months, we could do something like this again. And then instead of skipping the intro and then just focusing the whole conversation around exactly how to implement NFID step by step. And I guess by that time you're also further along in the development journey. So
Oh.
because I think, I mean, this is incredibly exciting. This is one of the key missing features on the IC, that is having an easy to use for end users authentication system implemented in all across the web the IC platforms. Because if we want to have the IC be scalable and have millions of users use it, then we need something like this implemented in every dapp.
Yeah,
I would also say, just if there are specific demands, just shoot questions to us and we can produce specific videos, what you need to see and how it works.
Yeah, we really appreciate what Bob's been doing, Bodily from Tonic, on making these videos and these weekly updates, and we've been encouraged to do the same, but we are a small team that are all dedicated on building, and so it's harder for us to make videos. But if there are specific demands, like Philip mentioned, it'd be a lot easier because then we have a topic to actually discuss and share. And also, Andrew, coming back in a few weeks or months would be great. Our Twitter handle is Identity Maxis. We are maximalists on identity after all. So apologies for having a lot to say, or not. No apologies for having a lot to say about identity.
No apologies. Exactly.
We are maximalists on identity. So yeah, we can skip that next time, or try to.
But yeah, today you answered a lot of questions that I think everyone had, and it was very important to start with these questions and then show people what NFID looks like and how it works before we start about implementation. So yes, that was good. Yeah, so let's keep the conversation open and let's continue at another point. And thank you so much, guys, for joining the workshop and for this presentation and running over the docs. And keep up the good development. Thank you, everyone, who joined us on Twitter, YouTube, or here in Zoom. It's been fun. I hope you guys also enjoyed it and try to implement NFID into your apps. That's final words.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us.
Bye.
Bye.